What's up, everybody? I'm Scott,
And I'm Jason.
and you are listening to Liquid Carnage. Buddy, we are recording this on what is so far the hottest day of 2022.
Yes, it is currently recording at 1:14 in the great metropolitan area of Phoenix, Arizona, baby.
And we are at 105 here in the greater Kingman metropolitan area.
Oh, you're air conditioned, man. Come on. You're air conditioned.
Yeah, just because it's air conditioned doesn't mean it's right.
It's hot as anything.
It's hot.
Huh?
After all, hot,
Oh,
hot. But it's the bad part is, and I don't want to say it's the bad part, but we have monsoon clouds building in or rolling in, but they're not going to hit.
oh no, really?
So you can see them, and they're starting to form, but they're still too high. So they look good, but all it's doing is causing some dry wind and just kind of making it like you're in a convection oven.
Well, so as everyone knows who listens to the podcast, the four of you, I have I took the project on this summer to paint the house, and I'm doing it little bits at a time. Usually, I'm doing it on the weekends, but I had a big accomplishment. It's a white house, and then it's going to have black trim everywhere. So it's going to be just basically that clean black, white, black doors, white columns, like white brick columns, and then a black garage door. It looks awesome so far. Well, I got a big chunk of it done on Sunday. I got the whole west side of the house now is completely painted white, except for the part that's going to be black. So I have to come over that later. But I got the biggest section done. It's the largest section of the house, and I got it done. But as Tom would very, I'm an idiot because it was 113 by like 10:30, 11 o'clock yesterday. It was awful.
Yeah, in fact, I talked about this in the pre-show meeting. I was actually down there yesterday too, or on Sunday over the weekend. Janice's oldest won an award and got to be on the field at the Diamondback game, and so we went down to go that. My parents went with us, and actually Tom or EP, if you saw our social media pages, he surprised us and came down from Denver for the day to see the parade and hang out with all of us. So it's kind of a fun day. But
I'm a tad envious of the executive producer. Just to say, you know what? I think I'll fly to Phoenix today and go watch a baseball game with the family and just fly back home.
Yeah,
I'll just make it a day.
Yeah,
I mean, he lives the dream, man. He living the dream.
he does, and he made a very good point because we were discussing our holiday plans. He goes, "It's cheaper to fly than drive right now, so that's probably what I'm going to do." And so, we understand because we're, Janice and I are plotting trips up there. We're supposed to go spend Thanksgiving up there with them this year, and the Cardinals are visiting the Denver Broncos in
that's right.
late December, so we're tentatively planning to get up there for that game. And as you know, the Denver winters, it's either going to be a snow cap, just snowstorm, or 65 degrees and sunny.
Well, I think that's really cool. I did hear a rule though. They said that if your trip is longer than 7 hours by car, then take a plane. If it's shorter than 7 hours by car, drive.
Yeah, well, it's a 13-hour drive up there, so we're definitely.
Oh no, yeah, you can't drive there. But I mean, I'm just saying that the rule that I've heard is that if it would take you less than 7 hours to get to wherever you're going to go by car, then travel by car. If it's going to be more than 7 hours, then it's easier, cheaper to take a plane.
Yeah,
and I'm saying that because with all the flight cancellations and all the bumping and flight delays, that they figure that anything longer than anything shorter than 7 hours, it would be faster for you to drive.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get that.
So
it's just funny to me, just the way things are going right now when it comes to that. And the drive down to Phoenix yesterday. One, I used to go down to games all the time, to Cardinal games on Sundays. So it's no big deal for me to get up. In the past, it's been no big deal for me to get up, go to a sporting event down in Phoenix all day and drive home. But I was doing it yesterday, and I was like, God dang, I hate this drive.
Oh,
Yeah,
see now, okay, so you and I are different on that because I think it's one of the better drives because it's so evenly broken up. I mean, it's Wickiup, Wickenburg, Phoenix, boom, done.
yeah, and when you put it like that, you're absolutely right, and that's kind of how I started breaking up in my head. And it's in comparison, being in LA last weekend versus being in Phoenix this past weekend. I'll take that Phoenix trip all day. Because the
Yeah,
stroke between Needles and Barstow is just, oh God, it's boring. But
yeah, there's definitely nothing out there.
it's just funny to me because going down there, you're excited because it's a game. But granted, we were going to the Diamondbacks and the Rockies, and it was literally the loser of that game was in last place of the division. So it's not exactly.
Oh no.
Chase Field seats like 55, 60,000 people in there. Might have been 15,000 people in there.
Oh
So,
boy.
I mean, it was nice because the lines for the beer and the souvenirs were all short. So it was still fun because there weren't as many people there. It just made me laugh that I remember working there back in the early 2000s, and the Rocks would show up for a weekend and that place would be rocking. It'd be full and people would be hanging out. And now it's just kind of like, well, call us when you're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I feel bad for the team too because every year they've gotten kind of a little bit worse, a little bit worse. This year it's been their hitting only because their pitching's been phenomenal. They have a really good pitching staff, but their hitting just they went through like 4 or 5 games where they didn't score a run,
Yeah.
kind of hitting. So it's been rough. It's been
You know,
rough.
that's what the EP and I were kind of talking about because it's kind of funny because no matter what, baseball has no salary cap for our 4 listeners that don't follow. If any of you don't follow baseball, I don't think that's true. I think the ones that do listen regularly do follow. So they understand that there's no salary cap in baseball, so the rich get richer. And
Well, yeah.
outside of LA, San Francisco, and San Diego in the NL West, if you're not one of those 3 coastal cities and willing to pay the big dollars, you're just hoping that you get lucky one year with your young players before they get poached.
Well, but here's the problem. So this is a vicious cycle, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you don't pay for the players, then your team's not going to be very good. If your team's not very good, you're not going to generate good revenue.
Yeah.
But if you don't have good revenue, you can't pay for good players. It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's terrible.
I mean, that's kind of why I like what the Rams have done, where they basically say, look, we'll just buy the players when they become good. Let's screw the draft, trade your draft picks. We'll just take good players once they've proven themselves.
See, but when you start talking football to baseball, though, and we won't. This isn't our topic today. Now we're just in a discussion.
Yeah.
It's different because there's a salary cap there, and you have to manipulate a lot with that salary cap. Now, baseball does have a luxury tax threshold where if you pass a certain number of millions of dollars for your payroll, that you have to pay a tax to everybody. But I don't think those teams that have to pay that necessarily care. And I realized that last weekend we were in LA. Here in Arizona, it's Bally Sports. Bally Sports, you have all the Suns, the Coyotes, the Mercury, the Diamondbacks, the Phoenix Rising. Like all of our sports are there. In LA, the Dodgers have their own channel.
Oh gosh.
And it's either the live Dodger game or it's Dodger nostalgia or Dodger talk with all the greats from the Dodgers, replays of historic games. It's so much content. They are literally printing money for their team. So I understand it. They had a good farm system. I don't know if they have one so much anymore because now they're at the point where they can buy the players they want.
Right.
But it kind of makes baseball less fun. And I realized that watching this game, it was cool being there, hanging out with everybody, but I could care less about the game.
Yeah, well, yeah, that makes sense.
The background, it's background noise. And, the girls enjoyed it, which is the important thing is they enjoyed being at the live event. Also because they got cotton candy and hot dogs, and they've agreed to go to a basketball, football, and hockey game next to see how those are. And I promised them that those would be a lot more action-packed than what they saw over the weekend.
Well, I find it an interesting rule of thumb, though, because obviously the Diamondbacks are not in any danger of leaving the Phoenix area because they are losing money. So maybe the manager has said, look, I'm going to squeeze every dollar I can, or the general manager said, I'm going to squeeze every dollar I can to keep us profitable. And we may not put up the best product, but we have enough people that love baseball that they'll go just to watch baseball, not necessarily care about the product.
And that's what we talked about yesterday, Tom and I did when we were having lunch afterward. It's, you get a crowd, a game like this on a Sunday afternoon. It's you both have the worst record in the division. You're tied with that record, and the loser's in last place. The only people you're going to get coming to that game on Sunday afternoon are your diehard season ticket holders that don't care because they love baseball. People that like this that have a kid in the pregame program or whatnot. People that are passing by or just in town for the day. I thought, this would be fun. Or someone literally coming down from Colorado to see family, and it's like, well, we'll go see a Rockies game here because we have family here. Because I guarantee in Denver they have the same attendance issues we have down here, so it's not a big deal to go to a game. So
I get it. I get it.
Just my
And and there's some regions that, I mean, they're so fanatical about whatever the sport is that their fanaticism keeps the team going. So
oh well, you look at like the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Cubs, the Dodgers for that fact. I mean, people like live and breathe those teams, and I get it, man. There's a lot of history and nostalgia there. I just I think baseball's a dying sport, and I think there's a lot of people that are afraid to admit that or accept that. You know.
see, and see, I look at it a little differently, but only because there's so many more position. Like it's such a bigger area. You have single A, double A, triple A that you can make a career out of. You can get up to the major leagues. You have, you know, the 32 teams, and you have their entire rosters are there, and your base salary can still be a pretty damn good salary as a base player. So that's why I think like a football team, there's 53 slots times 32 teams. That's it. 1,500 people. That's it. You don't get another opportunity. If you're not one of those 1,500,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a career. You know,
Yeah.
basketball, I mean, hell, basketball is even worse. 12 times 32. That's, you know, the best 400 players. That's it. So I could see why baseball would be at least interesting that maybe the problem is that the real major stars of a sport um, don't go play baseball, right? They go play football or they go play basketball or whatever.
Well, it's the interesting debate when you look at say Kyler Murray for this fact because he was a top 5 pick by the Oakland A's in baseball as a fielder, number 1 pick overall for the Arizona Cardinals as quarterback, and up until the January he committed to playing football full time, nobody knew if he was going to go into the NFL draft or go play for the A's because he'd signed a deal with the A's making millions of dollars to come up through their farm system and be their eventual center fielder.
Wow. Okay.
So he had that option, and they tried to float that as leverage for him this past offseason that he could just say he's done with football and go back to baseball. But it's a moot point after a while.
Yeah.
So I think people that want longer longevity in pro sports as far as athletes go, there's 162 games plus 30 spring training games and another 25 potential games in the playoffs. So you're looking at almost 200 plus games from start to finish in the World Series from February to October. So that's a lot.
Well, and like I said, then you add in that you have a triple A, double A, single A. So you have 32 times 4. You have, I mean, you have a ton of opportunities to make a baseball team. Um,
You do,
I guess,
but if you don't,
I mean,
those minor league teams, you have a lot shorter leash.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I don't know.
Well, on with the show.
On with the show. That's
Wow, the show's almost over, but on with the show.
different topic for a different day. You're right. We'll circle back to that someday.
So I had to kind of chuckle because I was reading the news this weekend, and you might have read the story, but there was a story about a woman in Texas who got pulled over for driving in the HOV lane, and when the cop pulled her over, she said, "Look, or he said, you can't drive in the HOV lane. You need to have more than one person." And her response to him was, "Well, I'm 34 weeks pregnant, and according to the Texas Supreme Court, life starts at conception. So, frankly, I don't think you have a leg to stand on. I have a life here, so there's 2 of us in the car." And the cop said, "No, no, no. The law is you have to have 2 people in the car." Well, the Texas Supreme Court said that my baby is a person and needs to be protected for its rights, so I'm utilizing that. And his response is, "Well, I'm not going to argue with you. You can argue it in court if you want." Now, she has not made it to court yet, so I don't know what's going to happen out of that. But it got me thinking: when is it okay to twist the law into your favor or twist rules into your favor? Because part of me is saying, "Hey, lady, look, the assumption of the law is you have 2 people or more in the car." The other side of me says, "Well, this is kind of your fault, Texas. You kind of put this out there that this could be interpreted this way."
I tend to go with the latter of that conversation because I understand what you're saying. I understand the intent of the law, but so often there's the intent versus the literal interpretation. And so many people in today's world would rather use the literal interpretation to benefit themselves, and then instead of going with the spirit of the law.
Okay.
So, it goes back to, you talk about, abortions, which you're not going to get into abortions, but abortions, and the vaccines. And, it's funny, you have pro-choice and pro-life for abortions. And then when the vaccines came out, those standpoints automatically, or not automatically, essentially they flipped. Those who were pro-life all of a sudden wanted to have their body, their choice, and those who were, their body, their choice, all of a sudden wanted to have, a mandate for all. So I think people are using the context of laws and beliefs to benefit their own viewpoints more than actually following them in the spirit in which they were created.
I, I don't know. I've always felt myself as a rule follower.
Yeah.
If the rules say you do this, this, and this, then I do this, this, and this. For example, taxes. I find that there's a lot of people who are getting these huge friggin' tax returns because they interpret the rules of the IRS differently than my rule follower self, which is I do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
I don't say, well, even though I work from home or I work, for example, let's say I clean a house for a living, right? I clean houses.
Yeah.
My thought would be, well, I make money off that. That's my job. So I'm going to pay taxes on that money. A lot of people would say, look, if you pay me under the table, then there's no way they can prove that that's my job and I can avoid paying taxes.
Yeah.
And I've always been the type of person to pay the rules. So is there a benefit to not following the rules?
Well, there's always a benefit of not following the rules. I mean, if we didn't have rule breakers, we wouldn't have America.
Ooh, deep. Expound, my friend. Expound.
I'm just saying, there's a reason there's the Boston Tea Party. There's a reason.
And so when they did that, they were breaking the law. They were going against the rules, and we look very highly on that.
Yeah.
Why do we look highly on that, but we look negatively on people who quit their jobs so they don't have to pay child support?
I believe it. Again, it comes down to the spirit of which the rules are being broken.
Okay, so the Boston Tea Party, maybe it's also the side you're on, right?
Yeah.
Like we, as the early settlers of America, our forefathers looked at it as a form of civil disobedience against an unjust ruler. The deadbeat who quits his job so he doesn't have to pay child support and support his kids, we look at them negatively because, hey, those are your kids. You need to take care of your responsibilities.
Exactly. So it's a funny interpretation today because a lot of people will use early colonial American events to justify their actions, whether you be on the left or on the right in today's world too, because they view themselves as the real patriots of today's world, fighting against the tyranny of the other side. So
okay, yeah.
So I think it goes back to my point earlier that people will bend and twist the spirit and the intent of rules and beliefs to make it fit what they are trying to accomplish in their purviews.
And we've talked about this before. There's no absolute validation of truth or validation of the rules because whoever side you're on is going to look at the rule as unjust or against them.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that sucks because I mean, at some point, a functioning society does have to follow a common set of rules, right? I mean, we have to do a common set of rules. It's the determination of whether those rules are just or not.
And I think that's what it comes down to. It's you have to be able to come to an agreement on set accepted rules, and go forth with the belief that everyone will follow those rules within the spirit and intent that they were created. And I think it goes back to the Constitution too. When you start looking at that, it's a lot of people today, and this is how the Supreme Court's interpreting a lot of things right now, is the literal law written, the word of law written in 1776. I believe the intent of the Constitution was to be a living, breathing document that can evolve and change over the course of the history of the United States, and I think that's obvious through the amendments that we have. So, to me, it's a weird interpretational time that we're in right now.
Yeah, because it seems like I mean, what's your stand? Are you a rule follower, or do you bend the rules to kind of accommodate your interpretation?
It depends on what it is.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm
See,
not saying
I find that I'm a rule follower. Like if like I've never understood when people don't wait in line like everybody else for
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Like
It's
to me, that's just a standard rule. Hey, there's a line that goes here.
well
You wait in line like everybody else,
to me
and
it's common
then they
courtesy.
cut in line or do something else. And it's like, why do you feel like you can just cut through and break a rule that everyone else is following? You're the outlier.
That's common courtesy. Excuse me. That's common courtesy, and I am a firm believer in that. But if you see a rule that is completely stupid and asinine, I have no problem with asking the person trying to enforce the rule or install it by asking what's the purpose? What are we doing here? Why is this even being a thing? And if they push back, I'll be polite, but at a certain point, I'll find a way around the rule. If they're being literal with it, then I'll be literal in how I get around it.
Do you have any examples that you could think of off the top of your head?
Oh, shoot. Um, Damn. I do. Off the top of my head, if I sat down and thought about it, I'm sure there's plenty of.
Maybe part of the problem is that we don't have a problem with the rule. We have a problem with the people that generated the rule.
I
Like
would.
one of the things that really ticks me off is when I plan a trip, they cancel my trip and I have to fix trip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, well, we don't have the manpower, so you have to fix our problem. Well, that's a dumb rule. That's a stupid rule that yes, I'm going to follow because you're telling me that's the rule, but maybe that's the thing is that I don't question enough whether the rule is a good rule or not.
And maybe that's what you should do. You should question things more often and see what comes about of it.
Yeah, my concern is that I would question to what I value, not to the overall validity of something.
Yeah.
Like you said, the Boston Tea Party, perfect example. Well, I don't like the way that Britain is treating us, so I'm going to dump their product into the water because I don't like their rule. Well, that's my interpretation of their rule, um, versus you broke the law. The law is you don't destroy other people's property. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like you can get away with it by just saying, well, I don't think it's a just rule, so I'm going to violate the rule.
It comes down for me. It comes down to what you're trying to get out of that situation. I think everything in today's world is broken down to transactional and situational, to where you will only follow that rule if it's convenient for what you're trying to accomplish, or it's within your purview of what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, there's that famous line from Steve Jobs that said, "The moment that I realized that the people making the rules are no smarter than I am is the moment that my life changed forever." And I think, maybe that's what it is. It's that it's we give too much credence to the people who make the rules that they're so much more advanced than we are.
Well, I think that's what it comes down to. It's if you're not questioning the rules, if you're not questioning the why, if it's something that seems weird to you, then you're doing yourself and your colleagues a disservice.
So, what do you think? Do you think this woman should fight this and try to get off on the technicality for the
Oh
HOV lane?
fuck yeah! Based on Texas state law, based on the rulings of the Supreme Court of Texas, um, I would be remiss to think that she would lose that argument because based on the laws that they've written, in the spirit of how they've been written, she is not wrong.
I remember a time that I was dealing with a child support issue on my own case, and they had somehow the court had said, well, there wasn't a child support order in place, so because we discovered one, we're going to go back 3 years and assess this much in arrearages and assess this amount of money per month. Are you okay with that? Now that rule that they said was like it was a huge number, like $60,000 and like $700 a month. It was huge.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I got to be honest, I do want to challenge that. So I went up against the rules that time, but because I thought that their calculation was erroneous or I thought it was wrong. And I made my case through the legal channels and it got agreed to by the judge saying, yeah, I think you're right, Mr. Edgeworth. That's an unfair interpretation of the state law on how they calculate the child support. And so I felt like that was my one time where I was like, I didn't break the rule, but I questioned the rules and it worked out in my favor. So maybe this woman will do the same thing.
Well, you sought clarification to something that didn't seem just.
It
And
didn't seem just to me how they calculated it. And I was able to put it in a way to the judge for them to say, you know what, in this particular situation, your interpretation of the rule is of the state is inaccurate because of the circumstances of this situation. Now, who knows? Maybe the interpretation was because I put up a compelling, emotionally charged, display or presentation to the judge versus my interpretation of the law. You know what I mean?
Right.
So how much of that is it like, oh, that just sounds wrong, so let's vote it down because it sounds wrong, versus no, that's an unjust law. So
yeah, no, I get it. I mean, it's just
I was watching a TV show over the weekend, and it was set in the '60s, and there was a scene where a bunch of black activists went in and sat in at a restaurant where it was whites only. They had the signs "whites only" during that time when whites couldn't or blacks couldn't eat at the same restaurants as white, or they had to eat in the back section, and they put this scene together where they have this row of maybe 12 black people sitting at a counter in this restaurant, and people are yelling at these people. The white people are yelling and throwing things at them, and I thought, my gosh, see, I couldn't do that because I'm not a rule breaker like that. You know what I mean? Like, someone else would have to fight that fight for me.
yeah, but I think that comes down to if you were in that position and you felt like something had to be done for the greater good. You say now from your perspective that you would have to follow the rules, but I think if the shoe were on the other foot, you'd have no problem.
So you think that if we went to a different, like if we see, I think if I would have went back to the '40s and I was a regular German citizen in the Nazi Germany, I would have a tough time. I'd have a really tough time because part of me would be wanting to help the Jewish people escape persecution and want to be, and another part of me, wow, they'll shoot me if they find out that I'm doing this.
Yeah, and I
Those
think
kind of dilemmas are tough, man. I mean, that I was thinking about that over something recently. It's like, this is how it starts. Starts off small, right? And then it kind of grows and grows. And
well,
as long as you're on the good side, you're a rule follower. But as soon as you start to question the morality of a rule, people get kind of sketchy on that kind of stuff.
well, that's the dilemma that all of Germany probably felt, a majority of Germany felt in World War II. So,
Yeah.
I don't think you're necessarily alone in that thought process, and that's the unfortunate side of the way the world is and the way the world has been. There's people that make the rules, people that follow the rules, and people that manipulate the rules to their advantage. And
Yeah.
no matter
Yeah.
where we go in this world, we will always have that situation. We will always have those types of people.
And maybe just some people have a better pulse on when a rule needs to be challenged than
Yeah.
others. I've always felt like, unfortunately, I'm just a rule follower.
No,
If they say stand in this line, well, that line takes 3 hours. Yeah, but you have to stand in this line. Okay.
yeah. No,
And there's a lot of people that say, fuck that, I'm not standing in the line. I'm gonna go do something else, and then they get preferential treatment, or they work around it. So
what's the old saying? The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
yeah, that's right. I'm just a quiet wheel. I don't need no grease, man. I don't
That's it,
need
man.
no
Maybe
grease.
maybe you got to get greased.
I got to get greasy every once in a while.
So as we wrap up today's show, we had two very different subjects. One
We did.
one that we had a clear intent to talk about. So we want to hear from you, man. What do you think about the rules? Do you follow them? Do you break them? Do you try to interpret them differently? We want to know. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage. Or if you have some fun rules, maybe the EP can bend up in the Denver metro area, hit him up at liquid_EP on the Twitter or the Instagram.
I promise everyone that I will try to keep up with this case in the Texas law to see if it ever comes to fruition. I can't imagine that it would, only because it seems like it would be a big hassle for someone who's either going to be pregnant or have a baby, to fight this rule. However, it would be interesting. If I can find anything about it, I'll let everyone know.
I'm pulling for this lady. You know what?
I mean, it's a great logic. It's a great argument. It's a great argument.
I think she's not wrong, based on the way the world is right now. She's not wrong. And you know what? If this is something that can benefit her, all power to her. More, go get it.
Hey, it's just like the comedian said, man. I wasn't drinking and driving. I was drinking and then I went driving. Totally
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah, two very different things.
Very different things.
I wasn't drunk in public. I was drunk in a bar. You put me in public.
Yeah, you put me in public. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
With that being said, Jason, take us home.
Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. We appreciate you as always. That was Scott. I am Jason. And as always, if you never know quite what to say, just have yourself some liquid courage.